Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Reset, the State of Black Dallas Fort Worth. I'm Jazzy Radio Chica. I'm the Community Affairs Director here with Radio 1 Dallas. And we have a esteemed panel that we are going to talk about issues such as the police brutality. We're going to talk about the coronavirus, mental health, and so much more. And right now, we're going to start with a special rendition of the Negro National Anthem. We have Lola Simone, and she is going to sing that for us.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with a harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the presence has brought us. Facing the rising sun, a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Is won.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I definitely did. So now we're going to bring on our panel. We're going to start with Mercedes Fulbright. She is an activist organizing director with the Working Families Party, a strategist, and a part of the Electoral Justice Project. We also want to bring on Aqib Talib. He is a Berkner High School alum, whoop, whoop, NFL player with the Miami Dolphins, philanthropist, and owner of D1 Gym in Carrollton. Then we also have Coach Gwen Hodrick. She's affectionately known as Coach Gwen. She is a professional counselor, influential motivational speaker, and a life coach. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Actually, Mercedes, I wanted to start with you with this discussion because I saw that you recently organized a protest here in Dallas against police brutality. Why did you feel it was important to organize that event?
Jazzy, for allowing me to be a part of this, and for the panel to be a part of this as well. I'm really excited to have this conversation with the public. So to your question about why it was necessary, why we felt like it was important to hold the protest, police terror and police brutality has been an ongoing issue in our community for decades. And we recognize that our silence isn't going to prevent us from being killed or harassed or criminalized. And so being able to come together as folks who are united around stopping police terror and violence in our community is important, not only as a show of solidarity, but for folks who are in leadership, as well as those who are in police force, to see that the people will not continue to stand by and watch Black bodies be murdered and slain in the streets. So that's why it was important for us to have the protest, and we've been protesting for about 24 days now, and we'll continue to do so until justice is served.
Yeah, I think it's really good that what you're doing and what everybody is doing. Aqib, I want to bring you into the conversation because you are a Black male. You are very successful, but have you ever been affected by systematic racism or police brutality?
Of course, being Black and rob nice cars and things like that. And harass or take foods, and it was no reason. Traffic, following my wife, and I was a big kid, saw that great. Explain to them, you know, what on. No matter how and it's definitely real.
Okay. Your sound is kind of going into Akib, so if you can just check on that, because it's kind of hard for me to hear everything that you said. But I do find it interesting that even though you have been successful in that, like you said, you have had expensive things and you have been approached, that's an unfortunate situation to have, especially with the whole police brutality. How do you feel about the protest, and what other actions can we take besides just protesting to make sure that we get the things that we want to happen?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I think it's definitely going to start with us voting, man, because we have to basically get the law changed. It has to be a stiffer penalty for police if they commit a wrongful murder.
Yeah.
Stiffer penalty. It can't be second degree murder and you sit down for 10 years, and it's like the person slapping them on the wrist is still, they buddies.
Right.
It can't be a buddy system. It just has to be a stiff penalty for if a police officer is accused of wrongfully killing someone, whether he's black, white, no matter what. If he's accused of wrongfully killing someone, it has to be a super stiff penalty. He's supposed to protect and serve us. And if he's not doing that, if he's using this gun just to use it, that's not right. So a stiffer penalty. I don't know how we get that. I'm not a politician. I'm into politics at all. I don't know. I don't even know where to start, but that's what's going to make it right. If they had a stiff for what they're doing, I guarantee you the number goes.
Yes, I agree. What about you, Coach Gwen? What would you like to add to this discussion?
Well, I agree with him. I think there needs to be tougher laws for all of that, not just about being blue, but about you did a crime and you should be held accountable the same way as anyone else. I think that's where we get off track, and we have different penalties for different stations in life, even different races. So that's where I think we need to start as well as registering to vote and making our voices heard. But I know we'll get to that later on.
Yes, because we do want to talk about the importance of voting, because I hear a lot of people talking, and then when you ask them, are you registered to vote, or have you voted? And they always say no, or a lot of times they don't vote, only in national elections and not local elections. So Mercedes, I know this is probably your sweet spot. Tell us why voting in local elections is very important.
Yeah, one is very important because the very folks that we elect into office create much of the budgets around policing. And so I think it's important for folks to understand, as they hear this local and national demand around defunding the police, that it's rooted in the thought and understanding that city council, our state government, and even the federal government puts in millions upon millions of dollars into policing, which for us translates in Black and Brown communities over policing, harassing, and in most cases, fatal murders that occur. And so when we talk about electing people and even unseating them, like bad actors, bad electeds, it's important that we follow not only on election day, but when they're actually voting on the city budget. The city of Dallas spends $500 million, so that's $500 million on policing, while there are folks and kids at home who are not in school right now that don't have food in their pantries. We have families that are homeless, mental health crisis. We're number 3 in childhood poverty in the state. The city of Dallas is number 3 in childhood poverty in the state. So when we talk about $500 million for us as activists and organizers on the ground, we know that that money could go back into the community in ways that can transform people's lives and create the safety and the quality of life that especially Black folks deserve. And so for us, when we look at elections, it is about making sure we get people in who understand the importance of the city budget and how it relates to actually providing the things that families and kids and people like us need. But also, if you have folks who do not understand that or don't care about our lives when they say Black Lives Matter, we can unelect them on election day.
Now, I have heard, I'm just going to play devil's advocate for just a moment, but I have heard when people say defund the police, taking some of those funds and putting them into community projects, which I'm all for. But I've heard some people say that we don't have enough police force here in the city of Dallas or Fort Worth, and they actually need to hire more police officers to help with crime, people breaking into homes, murders, and different things like that. And so if we defund the police, then we won't have enough police officers on the street. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so we have to understand crime and why people commit crime, right? So when I think about the folks in my life who have committed crimes, or even the neighborhood that I live in that has one of the highest rates of incarcerated folks in the community or in the city, which is South Dallas. Folks commit crimes because they don't have the resources that they deserve and need in their own personal lives. So when I think about Black mamas that are sitting in cages right now because they sell baby formula for their kids, I don't think that is the answer to let's hire more police so that we can prevent the baby mama that couldn't pay, couldn't afford baby formula to be able to afford baby formula. Like, a police officer doesn't replace the need for someone being able to take care of their child. And so what we want folks to understand, and when we say defund the police, we're saying invest in the things that actually can prevent crime, which for many folks, it is economic opportunity. People commit some of the crimes that you're seeing, especially petty crimes that have people in jail for years upon decades, because they're actually trying to survive. They're trying to find the things that they need to survive. And sometimes that looks like stealing from other people. That looks like coming into someone's home and grabbing something that they couldn't have received, if they had a good paying job, or if someone actually provided the housing that they needed, or if someone actually provided the mental health that they needed. So for us, it really is about, if we actually put the $500 million into preventing and stopping crime, then you won't need police officers. And we have to remind folks that police don't keep us safe. We keep ourselves safe. Our communities keep ourselves safe. And in South Dallas, I see that every day. Our folks have so many resources that have been looted and stolen from us over the decades. And we still find ways to be resilient, still find ways to survive, still find ways to take care of ourselves and create safety. And police are not doing that for us.
Oh, that's a great point that you just made. Now, I understand that some people are watching this live, and if you have any comments that you guys want to make, you can put them here, and I'll address it to the panel if you have any questions. We do see that Micaiah Kane, she pretty much said we have to start with local voting, which I think is a good comment. And, so you can continue with your comments or your questions, and we'll direct them to the panel. Now, with all the protesting going on, we have to know that we're in the middle of 3 pandemics, right? So we have the police brutality, we have the coronavirus, the cases are just getting really outrageous right now. And then we have the economic issues that we're having because people are having to stay home due to the coronavirus. Businesses are being closed, people are being laid off, people are on unemployment. And, so what do you say to people who are protesting? How can they continue to protest but still be safe at the same time and protect themselves from not getting the coronavirus? I can address that to anyone on the panel.
Well, I think
I want to make
we can do. Oh, okay. One of the things we can do is definitely wear your mask and practice good hygiene. I mean, that can't be said enough. I think part of the real issue is people weren't doing what they were supposed to do prior to this pandemic. And I mean, it's global. So it's not just people in the US or even in Texas. Doing that, understanding why you're using the mask is to protect yourself or other people from you and not to protect you from other people. So when you have that understanding, then it kind of works better and you have more people to comply. And really just going out in the community when necessary. At this point, most of the businesses are only open from 25 to 50%. So if it's not, I still operate under, if it's not essential, I'm not going out. I mean, I've been working from home since March. I haven't even gone back to my office, and cases are steadily rising. So really taking account for yourself and your family and worrying about that first. If everyone would think about that primarily, I think some of the cases will go down. Also, part of the rising, I think, as a healthcare professional is new cases, which means more people being tested or having resources to be tested. So we have to kind of look at it from that perspective.
Mercedes, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to name, those are really great tips. I've been out in the streets for 24 days and I took my test and I tested negative. So they're definitely really great preventative ways to stay safe. But I want to name that before George Floyd was murdered and everyone took to the streets, Our state governor was demanding that employers and corporations reopen their place of business and forcing people to go back to work. So in the midst of this pandemic, many folks didn't care about working class people and workers going back to work and risking their health. And so I think it's important to name and acknowledge that folks are coming out and risking their bodies, their health, their livelihood in the midst of a pandemic. And for them, they understand the greatest threat of a pandemic is police terror. It's not this coronavirus that we all should definitely be afraid of and take precaution around. But folks are literally in the streets, hundreds of thousands of people across the country, across the world right now, taking to the streets because we're acknowledging that the greatest pandemic is police terror. Despite, state governor telling us that the profit is actually what people care about over people. And I'm just thankful to know that the city of Dallas is willing to come together and risk our health and risk our lives to stand in solidarity with Black people and saying that our lives matter.
Right. And Akib, I mean, you're a small business owner. You own the D1 Gym in Carrollton. How has the coronavirus affected your business?
I think it affected all business around Dallas, all business around the world. Couldn't work. Basically, you can't work. You can't make any money. You have nothing to fund your business for 3 months, and then you come back. And if you operate at 25%, you're going to get 25% of what you were making. So business is down. I think business is down everywhere. Luckily for my family, luckily for my business, my staff is my family. So my employees, we just from home. If work or no work, my employees was going to get paid, So I'm glad we was in that situation because I see how bad it can get for someone less fortunate than me, just who, a new business that's opened. I can see how it's hard right now because you still have to pay and you don't have no money to. It's hard times right now. So, I mean.
Yeah, and it's really hard. That's something I want to touch on as well. It's hard for Black businesses in general. And I think that we need to do a little bit better, maybe do a little bit more research when we're going to go buy essential items and things that we know we're going to go out to eat. Maybe we should try to purchase things from Black owned businesses and try to help them stay afloat, especially during this time. And I know that even during the coronavirus crisis, Akib, you're still giving back. You're still being a philanthropist, and you have an event coming up that I want to mention on Saturday, July 11th. It's going to be at your D1 Gym. It's the 3000 Bellmead Drive in Carrollton. It's a drive-through food pantry with Minnie's Food Pantry. And so you just said that your company isn't doing the best, but yet you're still giving back. So why are you deciding to do that, even though you're not at 100% capacity in your own business?
I mean, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate enough to have what I have going on. So any way I can help, man. Our head trainer, Rodney Harris, he knew someone over at the Minis who's they wanted to do something and we wanted to do something. So we put our resources together, and our head trainer Rod kind of pushed that and made that happen for us. And that we all talked about we wanted to do, and he made it happen for us. So fortunately, man, we glad we can do that. We glad we can help the people who lost jobs, and we just hope people come through, the people who really need, the people who are struggling out in the community. So we just glad we're able to do it.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to mention that because there's so many people out of work, and some people, they've always provided for themselves. They've never needed help from anyone, but it may be hard for them to feed their family right now. And the kids are at home 24/7. They're not going to school to eat. You're feeding them all the time. And there is no shame in going to get food from places that are providing food for you if you need it. So I just want to make sure people know that, because we all understand the struggle, and that's why these resources are being available to you. Again, that food drive that he's going to have is going to be on Saturday, July 11th. And he's not just having that food there just so it can go to waste, right? He's trying to give it out. So if you guys need it, it's going to be from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. At 3000 Bellmead Drive in Carrollton. I do want to mention a question here for someone who's watching. It's from the Dallas Black Style Guide. They're saying it's been said that 41% of Black-owned businesses will not reopen as a result of the coronavirus. What can we do to help those remaining companies thrive and survive? I'll start with you, Mercedes.
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity to, one, lobby our state governments, our local governments, and federal governments to actually put in the stimulus bills and plans that they have to recover the shortfalls. And so I know that work is happening across the state. Off the top of my head, I can't think of the folks who are moving that work, but as a resident in the state, like, you can easily pick up the phone or send a letter or whatever is the easiest way to get in front of either your state senator, your state rep, or even your city council, to demand that they take care of small businesses, especially Black-owned businesses, and provide that stimulus money that Trump has been speaking of. So that would be a place to start. But I also want to recommend reaching out to the Dallas Black Chamber. I believe they have a fund that they're supporting for folks who are members of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce. So if you want to reach out to them, Harrison Blair is the president. I think that'd be a really great place to start, and he can direct you as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great point that you made. Coach Gwen, I wanted to talk about the mental health aspect of this, because people are having a hard time. Let's just be honest, staying at the house, social distancing. I'm having a hard time. After about 2 months, I was like, look, I'm ready to get out of here. I'm ready to do something. Okay. And it starts to become depressing. You start to have anxiety because you don't want to get anyone sick, but you still want to see someone. And so how can we manage all of these things that are happening to us, and then people losing their jobs and just all of this stuff? How can we remain sane during this process?
Well, I don't know if sanity is an option with all this stuff going on. You said we have, 3 major pandemics going on right now. So what we can do to reduce some of the stress is really reaching out to the resources that we have. One of the things I tell clients, when you're trying to make a change or you're trying to get some results, start with the resources you have. Talk to your family. There's 4 main supports: family, friends, community, and professionals. Start with that. Look through your job, your EAP, any of those things for counseling resources. Sometimes they might provide resources for food as well, maybe links to someone in the community. Go outside and get some fresh air. That vitamin D does help with mood. So it and working out helps. I would say watch a good movie, get creative. One of the things I tell people all the time is get creative as much as possible. It's not a lot to do when everything is in the home. Your work is at home, your kids are at home, school is at home, food is at home. Like we're all bored. So do as much as you can. I live by a little creek with a park and all that. So I go and walk as much as I can, or just go and sit out there, take a drive, that is social distancing, any of those things, but get as creative as possible. And it's really important to stick to a regular routine as much as possible, as you would as if you were going out into the community to your job or school or anything else like that. Take advantage of the the groups, hangouts or virtual happy hours or any of those things with friends. It may get boring after a while, or it may seem like, oh, this is not as exciting, but it definitely keeps you safe and a little bit sane.
This question is for the panel, but I want to start with you, Coach Gwen. Why isn't mental health taken seriously in the African-American community?
I've been answering that for quite a few years, but part of the thing is it's deeply rooted. It's deeply rooted in slavery. Like, we had to keep a lot of things secret. So we came here and we grew up in secrecy, and that also translated to the Black community, whether we want to admit it or not. And so part of it is, I don't want to tell anyone what's going on outside of my home. I don't want to tell anyone my problems for fear of being judged. So we've created that shame and guilt around mental health, because either that person is special, or I don't want to say that something is wrong, or I'm not crazy, or any of those things. I've heard so many things from ages, 97 to 5. I've worked with all populations, and it's the same. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want anyone to feel or see us as weak.
And I have noticed that in the news they've said that the cases as far as domestic violence in the home and even child abuse cases have gone up because people are in the home and they have to be home and they can't go anywhere. And so that's something else that when people are not mentally stable, those type of things happen. Mercedes, how can we help as a community try to stop those things from happening? I mean, can we intervene in any way? Another neighbor, just checking on another neighbor? What can we do to help that?
One more time, I'm sorry. It was breaking up for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. In regards to mental health and how it's affecting so many people, and the cases for domestic violence is going up. Child abuse cases, kids being killed because they're at home. It's sad.
Yeah. No, to that point, right? It comes back to this moment that we're in right now around defunding the police. Is that when you talked about like checking on our neighbors and like having the resources to actually address those things, like there's been a divestment of that. And so you don't have folks who can just pick up 911 and actually expect a mental health practitioner or a therapist to show up and support and provide what you need. And so for us, like that is a part of the work that we're doing, is to say that we actually need that money to not only support and protect folks who are experiencing abuse in their home, but people who are experiencing mental health crisis, and not for it to be a person that shows up with a gun to respond to that. So again, like all of these things are interconnected. So when we talk about defund the police, it is not just the sole interest of focusing on this one institution. This institution actually engulfs so many of the things that we need to take care of ourselves as a people, right? That when you say like, how can we just check on folks? Like there should be resources and institutions that allow us to do that. And much of that comes from the money that the police take every year in regards to the city budget.
Yeah. Akeem, have you have known someone or been affected by, depression or mental issues just due to everything that's happening with the coronavirus, economic, or even the police brutality?
Of course, man. I deal with it here in my house myself. I've been married. I've been with my wife for 10, 11 years. So we go down, we see counselors. You know what I'm saying? We was eyes too. We go sit down with counselors and we talk. And I think it helps us, man. That's why we're together today. So we deal with it here. It's definitely real. We don't take it. I think we did take it lightly early in our relationship. We kind of, stuff hit the fan. We just, we let it stay up there, So as we got older, we got a little more comfortable with each other, comfortable enough to go sit down with somebody and let them, kind of overcome things. And, it's real. It's more money, more problems. So
right,
we deal with a lot of stuff, man. Rich, until you get rich,
and to that point,
problem, so it brings a lot. So I think the older we got, we start to take our mental a lot more serious.
Right.
I was gonna say, and to that point, it keeps cutting out. Sorry. I'm not trying to cut you off. It keeps cutting out. I think that is stopping. I was going to say, like, for folks like you and I who have, like, access to mental health, professionals, like, I'm just thinking about the fact that there's so many folks who aren't on healthcare. In the state of Texas, there's over 1 million people that aren't on health insurance. And so they don't get access to, quality or even just in general mental health therapists. So I just think about the number of Black folks who probably do want therapists and they actually do understand the importance of it, but can't afford it, and the need for us to intervene.
There's a lot of resources out there for the underserved population. Part of the issue that I found in almost a decade of being a therapist is we don't necessarily want it. And I'm a community advocate. I go out in the community all the time for free and speak with people, case management, all that stuff. And there's a lot of times people be like, no, I don't want that. No, I don't believe in that. And there's the cultural difference. There's Medicaid, Medicare, there's CHIP, there's all those things that are available if people wanted it. And I'm not saying, it's not saying that, not in a bad way. It's more like because of how we believe, we don't access that stuff. It's there. And I've literally sat and helped people fill out insurance paperwork, disability benefits, all kinds of stuff. Like I started in Oak Cliff with my career. So, and I'm from Dallas, so I know what it's like. The problem is, and when I go out and speak in the communities at churches and different places, is people just are not interested because they're not educated. So what I start with is educating them about mental health. And, counseling and therapy is not just getting in there, giving a diagnosis and saying, oh, you have this issue, you're this, you're that. Sometimes it's just talking. Sometimes it's just talking through. Sometimes I just sit in silence with my clients just so they can not
get it off their chest. And you know what? That's why I commend you, Akeem, for even saying that you went to counseling with your wife, because some people look at it like you shouldn't go to counseling, like there's something wrong. But a counselor is just like talking to one of your good friends or a family member. You still got to get that stuff out. And when you harbor feelings, when you do bring them to the surface, it's horrible if you've been holding them in for a long time. So people need to understand, especially in the African American community, if you have some deep, dark secrets or some demons or something, you really, really need to talk to somebody about that, because eventually one day it's going to all come out and you don't know how it's going to come out. So it could be, small, or it could be with police force, which we know that's not what we need.
Right.
And so I'm also noticing that, on the news and with all the kids are seeing everything that's going on, right? And I'm seeing videos of, like, there was a child playing basketball. They saw the police coming down the street and they hid and waited until the police officer drove by before they started playing basketball again. And then there was another video of a little girl who a police officer just was gonna say hello to her, and she started crying in fear. And so our children are being mentally affected now by police. They're afraid of police. And how can we change that narrative? Is it our job to change that narrative, or should we try to focus that more on the police to change that narrative? But either way, it's still affecting the mental health of our children. So Gwen, if you could start with that, how do we talk to our kids about everything that's going on?
I think just like with most things, it starts in the home. Sometimes it's kind of that trickle down effect. If we're not educated about legislature and police or this or that, those are the things that we're teaching our children. So we have to start with educating ourselves so we can educate our children properly. In this juncture where we are, children have no choice but to learn about politics and police brutality and all that, because how do you explain why the schools are closed? You have to bring politics into it. So first thing is really educating yourself. And if you don't know enough about it, there's online libraries, there's other people that you can look to. That's why I said those 4 areas of support. You look in your community supports or your professional supports to figure out, how do I educate myself so I can educate my children? Because if we grew up afraid of the police because our parents grew up afraid of the police, what do you think we're going to teach our children? Right? And it's not that we shouldn't be afraid. It's just we're so afraid that we don't even look to what are our options. We don't even know what our rights are, because we just know we have to be afraid of that person with the badge and the gun.
Right. And Mercedes, I'm going to bring you into this conversation, because I've even had a conversation with my husband and my nephew. And I told him, if you get pulled over by the police, I don't want you to talk back. I don't want you to say nothing. I want you to give them what they want. If they decide they want to arrest you, just go quietly and we will handle that later. So why do we have to have these conversations with our husbands and nephews? And again, it's affecting the mental health of our children.
Yeah. I think what's unfortunate is that there's this notion and thought that, like, it's on us to get ourselves out of those situations, right? Like, even in that conversation with our family about, like, what are the ways to prevent ourselves from, being murdered by the police. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that just us existing as Black people has put us in harm's way when it comes to police. And so if we can be honest with our kids about the need for us, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, but the need from us to divest from policing and actually invest in the things that actually keep us safe, then one, we're teaching our kids not to be afraid of police, because we shouldn't be, right? Like, there is nothing to be afraid of. And it is a part of the fear tactic, right? Is that we be meek and docile people, and we shouldn't be, right? But also that there can be an alternative to what we're experiencing when it comes to policing. And so I think it's important to have honest conversations about what folks are seeing in the streets. Like, I'm having this conversation with my little sister, and I'm not lying to her and saying that, police actually could be better if they did this. No, actually, policing can look a lot different if we actually invested in alternatives outside of them, right? And that's to have these really honest conversations to where those interactions can hopefully be limited, because we're not relying on the police to be our be all and everything and the things that we are interacting with them about. But in the case of like, you know, these are the ways that you can get home, like we should still have those conversations. But I think what's really unfortunate is that our folks have been doing that and still being murdered on live camera, right, on these body cameras. I'm thinking of Philando Castile, who literally said, I have a gun in my glove compartment, I'm gonna reach for it, right? And we're communicating, we're keeping our hands on the wheel. And so just being honest so that our folks don't live in fear and they can like have the knowledge that they need to understand how we can actually divest from the institution of policing and do something different, drastically different, while still like holding our head high.
And you know, there's a comment here from Alicia Lambert. She said, police have issues and they shouldn't even be on the police force. They need mental evaluations more than they do because it's getting out of hand. Why can't police have mental evaluations? I mean, the job is hard. No one's saying that it's not hard to know. Most people, when a shooting happens or murder, rape, something like that, I don't run to those situations. I'll call the police, but they run into a situation, right? So day after day, that has to take a toll on your mental, especially if you saw, say, someone got killed or you saw something that has to take a bearing on your mental attitude. So why aren't police officers getting that help as well? That should be mandatory.
Well, I think one of the things to be understood is they do have those resources, but it's almost like an inside job. So I think part of the issue is if they would have someone from the outside, just like when something happened, we say, oh, we want an outside investigator or someone to come from the outside to do the autopsy or whatever it is, independent contractor. Those are the kind of things we need within the force because they are all working together. And of course, what do they want to do? Support each other. They don't want their brother or person or sister, whatever, to get in trouble. And a lot of times it's not objective. That's why even in therapy, you can't have dual relationships with people that you know. I can't be a therapist to my family member or someone that I know because I'm not objective enough. And I think we need more objectivity when it comes to those evaluations. And I agree with her. It needs to be done more often.
Yeah.
Like there are some programs with certain programs that people are in, and they have to have an evaluation every year or every couple of years just to maintain their license or certification. So I think some of that could be implemented as well with the police force.
Akeem, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, I think they need to be put on a higher pedestal, man. You need to have to go through a real course, something real to be a police officer. You know?
Yeah.
You got to really go through some type of course, and you have to really want it because you get held to a higher standard. So if you supposed to protect and serve Americans, if you kill one of them and you weren't supposed to kill one of them, you need to be killed or something. It needs to be something up there. They need to put them on. If they keep killing, they want to do this stuff, man. We need to put them on the highest pedestal. Get all the way up there, so when you mess up, it's so you all the way messed up as well. So
I agree. I mean, the code of silence, that they have. That's not something. If you see something, you say something. I saw the story of the police officer, the female police officer who stopped another police officer from choking somebody out, and she lost her job and her pension, and she's currently fighting for her pension because she stopped something that shouldn't have been happening in the first place. That's the problem, trying to cover up for their friends and their buddies, and they know that what they were doing was wrong. And I think that what you're saying, as far as having independent investigations and independent people coming in who don't know the police officers, I think that is needed highly. And we have a question here. It says, some police, from Michelle Jones, actually, she said, police subjected to psychological batteries. You cannot scream out malice, intent, and black heart. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what she means. By that, I'm assuming she's saying if they are mentally unstable, you can't say that they meant to do it.
Well, I want to be sure to like uplift that when we see these police killings happening, it's not on an individual basis. It is literally a history of an institution that allows for these things to happen and not have any consequences or accountability. And so I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that these individual acts like fold into a larger theme and behavior that policing has instilled in all of our departments. Like, I don't think it's been named in this conversation, but the existence and formation of policing came from slave catching. So how do you fix something or cure a rotten seed of an apple that has always been about anti-Blackness and focusing on Black people as less than, right? So I think it's important that we name that. Someone said it in here, like, reforms do not work. There are data and studies that tell you that body cams, these oversight boards, even the evaluation of them constantly and all of those things, it just provides more money for them to hire more people, hire more things to make them more better officers. But the entire institution of policing has been rotten from its core. And what we're saying is that we have to divest radically, quickly, in a way that actually focuses back on the people and giving them the money that they deserve to take care of themselves. And I don't want that to be missed in this conversation, because when we start to pick out, like, you know, if this individual had this or had that, no, like, the blue code is there for a reason, because the entire institution of it has been that Black lives do not matter. And we got to be okay with saying that, so that our folks can understand that and push back and be able to say it is important that we divest from policing and invest in people and invest in the community-based alternatives we're all advocating for.
And what are your thoughts on the police unions? Because to me, they're the ones who are keeping these people with multiple infractions on their record. I work at the radio station. Let me tell you something. If I had 18 infractions, I would not be here. Okay. If I had 17 infractions, I would not be here.
You had one.
Hello. Okay. So let's talk about these police unions, and are they really needed? Look, I'm not against unions. I understand them. They help the employees. But this type of police union got a whole lot of snake oil in it. And so I would like to know your thoughts on that. I'll start with you, Mercedes.
Yeah, and you pretty much said it. Like, we love unions. And when we say we love unions, we love worker right unions.
Yes.
Unions, we're talking about postal workers, we're talking about our healthcare workers, the people who literally take care of us, right? We will never disregard or dismiss labor unions. Police unions are not that. They are in the business of protecting their brothers and sisters behind the badge. And we, again, have to be honest about that. They don't come out and actually do or say anything when Black people are killed by police. They don't ever come out and apologize or say, you know what, we're going to rectify this, or we're going to come out with this, and that. It is always about protecting their publicity, their image, and reminding folks that that person had to die because they did something that we felt was a threat to our lives, right? And it's never about actually protecting the public. And so I think it was really great how you put that. Like, unions, we love unions because they actually take care of people. They're in service, they benefit us. And you know, when labor unions do the work that they are needed to do, like, we all benefit. Like, labor unions got us weekends. We have 8-hour days because of labor unions, right? Like, they fought for us to be able to be protected. Exactly. Insurance, wages, all of that. Police unions don't ever show up to strikes. Police unions don't ever show up to fight for livable wages, right? When we talk about raising the minimum wage, police unions aren't there. They're the folks who are actually creating the barriers between the employer and the workers, right? They don't ever cross the picket line and say, you know what, we're on the side of the workers. And I think it's important for folks to understand that police unions, they're co-opting that word union to make it seem like they're in service to people, but it's absolutely about them protecting themselves.
Yeah. When I saw the video of that 75-year-old man who was pushed down by a police officer, and they tried to defend it, and then I believe it was like, I don't remember the number, 40 or 50 of the other people who were on that same task force decided that they didn't want to be on the task force anymore. And as though it was okay to push a 75-year-old man. So I just can't get down with that. And so there's something definitely wrong with the way police unions work. And I understand that they're political. Jason Riddick says political donations by the police unions are huge. And so that's something else that needs to be discussed when you're talking about police brutality. Akeem, did you want to add anything to that in regards to the police unions or how you feel about them?
I feel like, man, they're an extension of the police. Like she said, they're there to protect the police officers. So just extension of the police to me. So they're in the same boat.
What do you think about people saying, in order to make change, be the change you want to see? So if you don't like the police, you don't like what's happening, how can we get our young people to run for office, to become community leaders like yourself, Mercedes, or to become police officers, where we have Black young men who are more than capable of becoming police officers? Why not encourage that? So if we have a new image in the police officers with different thoughts, that maybe things can turn out differently. I guess we'll start with you, Mercedes, in regards to being the change you want to see.
Yeah, I think the way that you set it up is perfect. What I always push back on is this thought that if we enter the rotten institutions that are treating us unjustly, that we can change them. And again, as I mentioned, like the seed from the beginning has always been bad. So as much as we talk about community policing, or if we, if the person I grew up with joins the police force, then maybe the police force will be different. It's not. They're still going to arrest people and put them in jail. They're just going to look like you. And so it's important that we understand that. What I try to encourage the young people that I get to organize with and work with is that we actually need folks who want to go into jobs that are more creatively problem solving, right? So like the work that Coach Gwen is doing, is important that we get more people doing that, right? It's important that we get more folks becoming nurses and doctors. Like the very things that actually can help society are the things that we should encourage our kids to be a part of, right? Like we still don't have a cure for cancer. Why can't we invest in the things that allow our kids to figure that out, opposed to going into an institution where you arrest, criminalize, harass people as a way of living? And I just think that there's bigger problems in the world than to encourage my little brother or sister to join a force that isn't actually focused on bettering society outside of criminalizing people.
What are your thoughts on that, Coach Gwen, as far as maybe having some people consider joining the police force and getting into politics and different things like that, which is being the change you want to see?
Well, I think Mercedes hit it on the head when she said it's not going to be any different if we get brown people in there or Black people in there, however you want, POC, people of color. They're going to still lock you up and they're just going to look like you, because it's indoctrinated within that system of policing or whatever, however we are enforcing government enforcement, that this is what we do. That's why they're using the same techniques over and over and over. And people are like, wait a minute, that's not, that's excessive force, that's this and that. But this is what they're teaching them behind closed doors, right? And so we have to get in there and change some of those things. There was a comment earlier that was talking about we have, not we, Black people have been criminalized, and it's been that systematic criminalization that we can't change, that goes all the way back to slavery, like we keep talking about. And so none of that has changed. It just looks different. We went from looking one way to the next way to the next. And so we have that mentality. Part of our issue is needing to change our own mentality within the community. Like she said, that we can be this, we can be doctors and lawyers and nurses and healthcare workers and people that can actually make a change in the community. Part of that is, like we talked about before, dealing with your stuff. I like the way he said that when it hits the fan, not just letting it stick up there, you have to deal with it. Like go and talk to someone and really drill down on your problems and figure out what it is so that you can go out and make a difference. I'm not saying that I don't have any problems. I'm saying I recognize what they are and I've been working on them. I always say, like, do your own work. So that's really part of it, is trying to undo some of these learned behaviors from way back and really changing the way we think, because thinking and feeling and behaviors all go together. But if we get our feelings ahead of the thinking or ahead of the behavior, we're not going to be able to make effective change and be that change.
Mercedes?
I was going to say, if you can just imagine a world where we actually have more like teachers, healthcare workers, all these things, more than police, like I can tell you right now, our world will look completely different. It will be safer. Folks would have more joy in their life. Like our health would look different as a Black community. And that's like what I want folks to lean into, is like the affirmative when we talk about this work. Like a lot of people will say like, oh, you're just anti-police, this is, and I'm like, no, I'm anti-violence, I'm anti-Blackness, I'm all of these things. And I actually we're trying to build and organize towards a world where there are more of these folks who actually can take care of our society. And we benefit from that in a way that you don't benefit when we build more prisons or we build more juvenile detention centers or we hire more cops that have guns. And that's all we're trying to like tell, you know, our folks. We're trying to tell the public, like, y'all, like, our world will look so much different if South Dallas was flooded with community centers and beautiful parks and recs and mental health clinics and all these things that our folks deserve and need.
Part of the big issue, like you were saying, is divesting, because what it takes for that is money. The teachers don't want to be or people don't want to be teachers because they're not being paid enough. They can barely make their regular bills most of the time, especially at entry level. You know, these people that are out helping in the community aren't getting paid. We don't have the resources to build a clinic. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and volunteered my services for free. And sometimes I can't give away therapy because there's no value in it. There's no value because there's no money in it. And so that's one of the things we have to change too, is how we're funding it and the value we place on it.
Exactly. Every time we increase police budget, we take away from the community, and that includes like public education. And I don't want to leave out folks who want to go into sports either, because I think it's important that we have folks like you who want to do that sort of profession. So I want to include that as well. Like my life will be great if I can focus on that and cheer on my people who are doing that, right? But like we're juggling so much. So
and you know, I've always said that education is the backbone of getting out of poverty, getting out of so many different things, right? Because you could be born with nothing, but if you educate yourself, you'll learn how to get scholarships or find a way to get out of the situation that you're in because you're educated. And so it starts to me with education. And so when you go into these neighbor areas, maybe, you know, South Dallas, where the schools don't have the proper equipment, the proper things that they need, the proper books, you're not holding your teachers to a certain standard, just a whole lot of different things. It starts there at the schooling. So if in one school district, you're promoting STAR test because your kids aren't passing it, but in Frisco, we don't have a problem with our STAR test. You know, why is that? So these
well funded
to be great at a young age. Because they already have the foundation of education, and kids that live in Black and Brown communities, they're starting education. They're not afforded the same opportunities, and so
they're not invested in.
They're not invested.
Like financially, they're not invested in. So when you mentioned Frisco doesn't have 100 cops patrolling their neighborhood. You know what they have? They have what we all are naming, right? You just said, like, all the things that our kids need to actually have the time to focus on education and not show up in the hallways and get harassed because their pants were too low or whatever, right? Like those sort of things aren't happening.
On every block, they have Whole Foods and grocery stores, and food deserts. So you can't put us in these situations and then expect a different result. Because maybe if you put Whole Foods in the Black and Brown communities and you put better schooling in the Black and Brown communities, let's do an experiment and see what happens then.
I think just getting people out and getting involved, being community advocates. We talked about voting a little bit earlier, getting out and vote, registering people, joining the PTAs, joining the booster clubs for sports and things like that. Part of the issue is why they're not invested in some of the underserved communities is because we don't have the money to invest in them. Like those people aren't making enough money to do that. So really looking at the different alternatives, how can I help out? Can I raise money? Can I volunteer? Can I do this? Can I do that? So those are some of the other supports that we can provide aside from money, which is very much needed. But we've got to look at when there's no money to give, how else do we get it done?
Right. And so we're going to conclude this conversation. But before we go, you know, I want to ask, because I want this to be an actionable conversation, right? We can talk about everything that's an issue, but how can we make change? Is voting the start of it? And I'll start with you, Mercedes. How can we make change?
Well, the start for sure, I would say we don't have an election until November 8th. So before that, the city manager in the city of Dallas, if you live in the city of Dallas, the city manager will be proposing the budget recommendation for the 2021 fiscal year. And again, I keep bringing it back to defund the police, because that is going to be where he determines if he's going to increase the police budget and divest from the community, or if he's going to do the reverse, which is invest in the community and defund the police. And so the first step I would say is to pay attention on August 11th and be engaged at the local level, and then recognize that, one, we have a November 8th election that is the presidential, and there are down ballot candidates for that. But next year, next spring, we'll have a city council election. And so if you're paying attention in August up until October around that budget, and you see that they have again cut community centers, or they've cut the public education, or they cut something that you know our kids and our families need, that's the moment that you get to decide, actually, I'm not going to elect that person again, and I'm going to put someone else in office. So that is where I would start. And then to Jasmine's point around what community organizations should we support and follow, Keita named it right there in the chat. In Defense of Black Lives Dallas, that is the coalition that I'm a part of. The two organizations that I get to work with and represent are BYP 100, the 18 to 35-year-old Black activist and organized membership organization for folks who are interested in throwing down for Black liberation and justice for our folks. And then Texas Working Families Party, which is a grassroots political party, and we do engage in elections. So if you go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and follow In Defense of Black Lives, we are basically informing what we're doing here with you all. We're informing folks on what we mean when we say defund the police. We're talking to people about this budget, and we're talking about these elections, so that we can either unseat these folks who are not in the interest of our people, or elect our own people to serve us.
Gwen, what would you like to add to that before we leave?
Really, like she said, get involved, go talk to someone, seek mental health. There's a lot of resources out there. You can go to my site, askcoachgwen.com, and send me a message. I can give you resources. You can look for me online on Facebook or Instagram. Really look at all of your benefits, reach out to your providers, your support systems, everything. And most of all, just get involved. Whatever you can do in the community to make a difference, like you said, be the change you want to see. I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you. And Akeem, what would you like to add before we go?
I think everything that we talked about health, man, that's from taking care of our mental health, making it cool to take care of your mental health, making it known that it's okay to go see therapists.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the situations we do see when people get killed, maybe they're having a little bit much to drink because something is on, and then it leads to that. You know what I'm saying? So I think we could cut the number down by that, by educating, making it cool to go to school, making our know that it's okay to be in the politics and stuff. I think the opposite of what you guys said. I think if people get in there, if it get overpopulated with Black people, it'd be too many opinions in there, and eventually they have to change something, you know? So we're going to get the laws and the rules changed. I think we have to be in the door. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Got to be at the table.
Cool to be in there. If we want to change, we gotta change. So all the teenagers right now, 16, 17, 18, it's on y'all, because it's too late for us. We 34. I can't get in the house. So it's on the people who are in school right now. We need a big wave of them to go super deep.
Change it.
You know, and change it ourselves. I think that's how we're going to get it done. So we got to make those things cool, in my opinion. People, stuff is cool right now. So somebody need to make a song about it, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much. Go ahead, Mercedes.
I was going to say, to his point, I just want folks to know that there's a place for everyone in this movement that is happening locally and around the country. So however you show up, I love that you said, like, if you make music, if you're an artist, if you do something, there is literally a place for you in this movement. And we need everybody, Black, brown, white, whoever is listening, to join, because we need all the bodies, we need all the people, we need all the brilliance in order to win.
That's right. And before we go, again, I want to mention that Akiva is going to have that drive-through food pantry event, and that's going to be on July 11th on that Saturday. It's going to be from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at 3000 Bellmead Drive in Carrollton. They do need volunteers, so if you're interested, you can call Rodney Harris at 909-452-1135. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us for this panel. And, you know, the conversation doesn't end. You can continue your comments, and we will look through your comments and answer them as we see them. So thank you again for joining us for the Reset, the State of Black Dallas Fort Worth. Thank you all.
Love you, Dallas. Bye.